Rita? Okay. Her presentation is applying translation memory tools in the simultaneous interpreting from Arabic into English of Islamic discourse and empirical study. Ms. Yumna is an MA candidate at the Department of English, Language at the Faculty of Allison, Ain Shams University, Translation and Interpretation Technology. She has been working since 2008 in translation as a freelance, and in 2017 she taught computer skills for translators at Rifa unit in Al-Asa. Mrs. Yumna, please.
First of all, Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank you all for attending today. Today, so far, has been such a great day, full of information, full of knowledge. Thank you so much. Today, I'd like to talk about something that's a little bit new, which is not just applying any kind of technology or any kind of tool, translation tool in simultaneous interpreting, but it's a tool that hasn't been used before, which is translation memories. But before that, let's talk a little bit about interpreting, simultaneous interpreting. Simultaneous interpreting is a very challenging, a very stressing, a very tiring process. And those who have worked in interpreting, they already know that. Okay, so first, why is it that tiring, or why is it that challenging? According to Professor Daniel Gill, who is an interpreter and a mathematician, he decided to make the efforts made, or the mental efforts made by the interpreter, he made them in like an equation. He said, in simultaneous interpreting, your mind during the process itself works on listening, at the same time production, you are listening and interpreting, and you're storing information in your mind or in your memory, whether working memory or short-term memory, and you coordinate all of that. So you're already doing lots and lots of things at the same time while interpreting. So people started thinking, okay, this is very tiring, I do lots of things, I face lots of challenges, so of course we're in the digital age, we're in the era of technology, so why not try to use or apply technology to aid me or to help me in interpreting. And thus came Cairo tools or computer-aided interpreting. In computer-aided interpreting, let's just talk a little bit about Cairo tools' background. When they first started, or people started applying technology in interpreting, they thought first of using it as setting. It was just first setting oriented, just thinking of applying technology or using technology to help me in the place itself. So of course, in the very beginning, there were telephone interpreting, and then the latest things of interpreting, which is the remote interpreting. And of course, like everything that Cairo tools or interpreters still suffer from is we don't have most of the tasks that we need. We don't have tools that are specifically designed for interpreters. That's why at the very beginning, even in the remote interpreting, they have started working using video conferencing tools like Skype and such stuff. And then in the past 2 to 3 years, we have started to find some remote interpreting programs. Like, for example, one of them is called Kudo, which is designed specifically for remote interpreting. And then interpreters decided, no, we want to use or to apply technology in the process itself. Thus, the process-oriented Cairo tools. And currently, they are divided only into 2 generations. The first generation was mainly using generic programs to help interpreters in the process. So when they started, they started using them for managing my glossary or managing my terminology while working in the booth or while interpreting in the booth. So they started working using terminology management tools or generic terminology management tools like Excel, like even some of them started to use term bases that are used in translation or in CAT tools. They have started to apply term bases or terminology management tools designed for translators for looking up the glossary, or sorry, for looking up the terminology that they find some difficulty while checking them out. In the booth itself, I have a difficulty in checking a word, or I don't remember the word, so I look it up while I am in the booth. But still, those programs, they were not designed for interpreters, so they still had some problems. And thus comes the second generation. They have more advanced features. They are designed for interpreters themselves. And they started to apply corpus, or before the process itself, while collecting my data for studying or for preparing myself. Before the process, I use corpus processors to collect my data, term extractors, and have them in my Kai tool, and then I use them during the process itself in the booth. So those Kai tools, especially, of course, now we're talking about the second generation, they are divided into major four types. The first type is the terminology management applications, the ones that I was just explaining. One of the most famous tools that are currently used by interpreters are like Interpret Bank and Intraplos and Interplex, for Interplex EU. Still, most of those programs we have, so let's divide our problems like a tree. So the first thing, we have a problem as interpreters. And the second thing, we have problems as Arabic interpreters, or interpreters who use Arabic language. So for example, in the terminology management applications, the only one that supports Arabic language is Interpret Bank. So for us interpreters, if I want to use a Kai tool to help me look up terminology in the booth, I only have Interpret Bank. And then there are note-taking applications. We don't have any kind of note-taking applications specialized or especially designed for interpreters. So that's why one of the main famous note-taking applications that are used by interpreters, and here in this case we're talking about consecutive interpreters, of course, is like Evernote and Ink and InkNote and all of those programs that are generic, they have been designed, they are generic programs, they are not designed for interpreters. And we have voice recording applications. Still, voice recording applications, we still have the same problem. They're not designed for us. Specifically, when are they used? They are used in a new technique used by interpreters, which is called simulconsec, where interpreters use consecutive interpreting, but they are specific. They are in simultaneously interpreting. So I'm supposed to listen to the speaker, and I'm recording for the speaker, either the speaker himself, or I'm recording my own notes instead of writing them down. And then I listen to my recording, and I interpret, which is simulconsec. That's from there we had that term, simulconsec. And we have the training applications. Thank God we have one or two applications that are designed for interpreters in this field, or as they call it, the KITE field, that computer-aided interpreting training tools. So like one of them is, for example, called Black Box. And as long as we're in the digital age, one of the very amazing features of this application that we don't need to be training together in the same lab as until now we do. We just do that, we can do that remotely, even from different countries. We can learn that and use Black Box, and with my trainer or my instructor, and in different countries. And it is tailored for interpreters, and even not just interpreters, even if I'm an instructor and I'm teaching 20 students at the same time, I can even tailor the training for each one of those for each one of those trainees, which is really cool actually. So now let's focus, or when I started looking at that, I had in mind that we specifically in some of these courses, we have already ready-made translations for documents, like for example legal. If I'm going to interpret in a legal event, for example, and the speaker is going to state some parts of the law or some items of the law, why would I have to reinvent the wheel and interpret it again, although we already have an authenticated translation for it? Also in the Islamic discourse, specifically of course the Quranic verses, the hadith, and some of the Islamic expressions like the divaga or the cliches that are used by speakers at the very beginning of their speeches, like Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala ashraf, and so on and so forth. And in such things, or in such cases, I cannot use a translation or a terminology management tool because it's not a terminology. So I had like a random questionnaire. I tried to spread it among the interpreters, and I have asked them, what are the problem triggers, or what are the major problems for you while interpreting Islamic discourse? Mainly what I had in mind, which is, number one, they had a problem in terminology, which is specifically here the Islamic expressions. And number two, they had a problem in interpreting the accurate translation of the hadith and the Quranic verses. The first part, the Islamic expressions, could be divided into two. The first one, just terms that consist of 2 or 3 words together, so this problem can be solved with the terminology management tool. But with the other ones, the long ones, the hadith and the Quran phrases, what do? They use some strategies like approximation, paraphrase, consulting documents, and omission. Whether approximation and paraphrase, they mainly mean that I don't deliver the specific meaning, I just try to explain what's happening. And I'm just highlighting, we're stressing, we're talking about Quran and Hadith, specifically Quran. So I'm going to explain or try to say what approximately, roughly, this is what they say. So again, it's not accurate at all. And some people, they consult documents, because in some cases the speaker would provide the interpreter with the speech they are going to say. So the interpreter would have the luxury, and we call it luxury, they would have the luxury of using or knowing what kind of hadith and what verses and what hadith they're going to say. So beforehand, I would use, or I would search and extract the translation or look up the translation. And when the speaker is going to, or when the speaker starts saying them, I start looking up them in my papers. So still, again, I'm using papers, so it's not that organized. It would also take, here in this case it's accurate, but it would also take some time. And the last one, which is the worst for any interpreter, or as they put it, شر لابد منه, omission. We have to omit either a part or the whole thing, which of course affects the meaning. So, okay, now what about using, these are the results of the questionnaire, of the strategies themselves when I asked the interpreters. The first one in the Quran verses, it was 52% of the subjects, who were around 55 interpreters, mainly from Egypt, but 27 of them were from Egypt, others from other 4 countries. 52% of them said that when interpreting. Hello? Sorry. So, when interpreting the Quran verses, 52% of them use approximation. 47, they check the documents or ask for help from their booth mate. And 7% said that they use and 2% said they omit, they use omission. 77% said they use other strategies. Mainly, what their main strategy was memorizing the translation of the hadith, or in this case, the Quran verse. So I'm going to memorize a translation of hadith or a Quran verse. with remember all that mental effort and the cognitive load that I'm already using during the process itself. So, and the other one in the hadith, 52 also said that they use approximation, 2% omission, 37 said that they use the both, the help of checking help from documents or both made, 9% said they use other, and those others were memorizing, again, the hadith itself. Or in this case, of course, we're talking about the translation of the hadith. The Islamic expressions, 44 said they use approximation, 2% said they use omission, 47 they check their documents or help from their boothmate, and 70% other. Those other, they said mainly again, they memorize them. So although in this case it's a little bit easier, but still it is a bit difficult.